In a startling move that would alter how people in Britain use their automobiles, the government is allegedly preparing to eliminate gasoline duty completely, substituting it with a contentious paper-mile tax scheme. This significant change, which Chancellor Rachel Reeves is anticipated to announce in the next budget, is thought to be the government's response to an impending tax deficit of £25 billion as the UK moves towards electric vehicles. EVs, the Treasury is losing a significant source of revenue as fuel sales decline and more people choose electric vehicles, leading the government to consider drastic alternatives including charging drivers per mile driven on UK roads for decades. Fuel duty has been a pillar of the UK tax system, bringing in billions of dollars annually. However, as the government works to achieve net zero emissions and promote the widespread use of EVs, sales of gasoline and diesel are rapidly declining, according to industry experts. Without alternative tax measures, the Treasury may lose £9 billion in revenue by 2030, which could double to £27 billion by 2040, which could equal half of the nation's defense budget. Since EV adoption has reached critical levels in nations like Iceland and New Zealand, where road users are required to self-report their mileage and pay taxes digitally, the government is now considering the proposed paper-mile tax as its preferred way to close the gap left by the decline in fuel duty. According to PwC, drivers would be taxed based on the number of miles they drive rather than the amount of fuel they use. The UK is predicted to have 50% of its cars running on electricity by 2035. The government must find a way to make up the billions that were lost due to dwindling fuel sales. The UK transport leader for Grant Klein PwC described the challenge of striking a balance between the country's financial requirements and environmental objectives. One circle is difficult to square. Klein stated that while net zero goals suggest that incentives for EV purchases are necessary, there is also a potential black hole from the gasoline duty reduction as more people choose electric vehicles. Fuel duty is a dead tax, according to Caroline Devon, ESG tax leader at PwC UK, who also noted the sharp drop in revenue it brings in as EVs gains traction. According to Devon, the paper-mile system is a natural fit for fuel duty because it provides a fair system where drivers pay according to how much they use the roads rather than just what kind of vehicle they drive. However, Devon also acknowledged that introducing this tax won't be simple. You can't just switch overnight. Despite these difficulties, sources suggest that the government may start laying the foundation for this system in the upcoming budget, and the shift could occur as early as 2028 or 2029. This timeline illustrates how urgent the gasoline duty situation is. One of the main worries is the potential financial burden that this new tax system could place on regular drivers in accordance with the electric car scheme, as revenue is going more quickly than anticipated. Under the proposed system, the pay-per-mile tax could see drivers pay up to 15 pence per mile, which would represent a significant increase in costs for those who depend on their cars for daily errands, family activities, and commutes. For rural drivers and those who live in areas with limited public transportation, this could have a huge negative financial impact. The potential paper-mile system, according to Tom Groot, CEO of the electric car scheme, would represent a significant change in how the government taxes road users in Britain. Under current regulations, drivers are taxed based on emissions, with higher rates for gasoline and diesel vehicles while EVs enjoy reduced tax burdens. However, the pay-per-mile tax would change the structure, charging drivers for how much they use the roads regardless of the type of vehicle they drive. Proponents contend that this system is fairer because it reflects actual road usage, but critics fear that it will disproportionately affect those who are forced to drive long distances. The impending budget may also be bad news for the nation's pensioners because Rachel Reeves is allegedly thinking of extending the income tax threshold freeze, which was first implemented by the Conservative government and was supposed to last until 2028. This freeze would force more low-income earners into higher tax brackets as incomes increased in line with inflation, potentially bringing 1 million more pensioners into the tax system. With the state pension set to increase to £11,975 in April due to the triple lock, more pensioners will find themselves approaching or exceeding the tax-free threshold. The income tax threshold freeze currently stands at $12,570, meaning that income above this amount is taxed at 20% and the threshold for higher rate tax 40% is set at $50,271. Many people who have never had to pay income tax before may get surprise tax bills as a result of this circumstance, further taxing an already troubled aging Britain. Growing expenses for living. The prolongation of the threshold freeze could drive individuals already paying taxes into higher bands and push up to 1.5 million retirees into the basic tax rate band, according to a financial company Quilter Research. Critics contend that low-income seniors, who do not have the financial flexibility to bear these additional expenditures, are disproportionately affected by the freeze, which is estimated to generate £7 billion annually for the Treasury. The freeze, according to Quilter's head of retirement policy John Greer, is a covert tax that gradually makes the income tax system more onerous for individuals with the lowest incomes. Limits intended to protect lower-income individuals are subtly becoming a tax burden for those with the lowest earnings. Greer cautioned that pensioners may find financial planning considerably more challenging if the freeze is extended. He underlined that when state pensions increase but the thresholds stay frozen, many retirees may be caught off guard by additional tax payments. Although the tax freeze is not strictly a tax rate hike, its possible extensions also cast doubt on Labour's adherence to its manifesto pledge not to increase income tax, VAT, or national insurance for working people. The public is left waiting to see how Rachel Reeves will handle these urgent issues as the budget release approaches, because the consequence of forcing more retirees into the tax system might be perceived as a betrayal of that pledge, igniting a reaction from voters. Both the income tax threshold freeze and the proposed paper mile tax reflect substantial changes in the way the government collects taxes, and both are probably going to be extremely unpopular with drivers and retirees. Pensioners may have to pay significantly more just to get from point A to point B if fuel duty is replaced with a paper mile scheme. The government's need to balance its books may force both groups to cut back on their already meager income with unexpected tax bills, but the bigger question is whether these actions will make life even worse for Britons already struggling with a cost of living crisis, as the government faces a £27 billion shortfall in tax revenues by 2040. Severe measures are unavoidable, and the switch to electric vehicles, while a good thing for the environment, is having a disastrous effect on the Treasury's finances. Fuel duty is no longer viable, but while the nation prepares for these possible changes, many people believe that the paper mile system and tax threshold freeze are the wrong solutions at the wrong moment. The budget for Rachel Reeves could mark a shift in how British citizens handle the financial realities of retirement and how they pay for their roads. Will millions of drivers and retirees be outraged by the Chancellor's policies, or will they result in more equitable taxation systems?